We brought a bunch of fantasy football experts all together in Austin, Texas here, and we are asking them what is their boldest prediction for 2024 fantasy football. Leave it down below in the comments how high these rank on the Scoville scale. 1 meaning not very bold, 10 meaning very, very bold. And the first guy that we got up here is Avery, Fantasy Domain, Dynasty Domain, Domain Fantasy Football.
All of it.
We've called you guys all of that throughout these videos. What is your boldest prediction this year?
Okay, so this might not be the boldest thing of all time, but I guess some people might think that this is a bad take. But I think Kyler Murray will finish as the quarterback 1 overall this year in fantasy football. And I've got a couple reasons for this. Number one, and we were talking about this before you're on the video, when Kyler Murray is healthy, Kyler Murray has been a top 3 QB every time he's been on the field, right? And this is largely because from a rushing upside standpoint, Kyler Murray has a super high floor, and anytime he's surrounded by good enough weapons to, produce in the passing game to a point where he can actually score a good amount of fantasy points, you see him as a top 3 asset. And so obviously Josh Allen's going to be probably the favorite to be the quarterback 1 overall this year. You always got Jalen Hurts up there. Both of those guys are scoring a lot of rushing touchdowns, kind of same deal. With Kyler, to me, Kyler's now playing with one of the best wide receiver prospects of all time in Marvin Harrison Jr., a guy I think can come in the league, immediately get 150 targets this year, and actually, I think he could straight up dominate from week 1. So with that being said, he's got his best receiver, in my opinion, that he's played with in his career. You could go with D-Hop as well, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is up there. You've got Trey McBride, who you've seen when Kyler Murray plays with tight ends like Zach Ertz. You saw him use the crap out of Zach Ertz. And Trey McBride was a great prospect. He's one of the better tight ends in the league, in my opinion, really up and coming. And so between those two guys, not to mention you've got Michael Wilson there, I think that the weapons group is that will support Kyler Murray and not only being productive in the rushing game and allow him to stretch the field a little bit more, but I think he's going to be hyper productive in the passing game this year as well. I think obviously 1 year removed now from his ACL injury, which, that's a big deal for rushing quarterbacks. But now that he is far enough away from the injury, now that he's got an improved weapons group, a lot of people are really low on this Cardinals offense, and I get it. However, I do think with Kyler's rushing upside, there's a really good chance he finishes as the quarterback 1 overall. So that's my bold take.
I love it, man, because I look at this Cardinals offense and the way that they coached up a very suboptimal weapons group, very suboptimal quarterback play for the first 8 to 10 games of the year before Kyler came back. I mean, they beat the freaking Cowboys with Joshua Dobbs. This team can elevate the play of subpar talents. What are they going to do with a healthy Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison freaking Jr., Trey McBride healthy, Michael Wilson's a decent depth wide receiver, Greg Dortch, slot receiver. I think this offense could be a lot better than people think. Kyler Murray, when he was at his best, was 8-9 rush attempts per game, 2020, 2021. And honestly, having the threat of those outside wide receivers, having a good run game, which I believe both in James Conner and Trey Benson as players here. I think this offense can be a lot better than people think. So I do love this call on Kyler Murray because if he runs hot on rushing touchdowns, has 600, 700 rushing yards, and he scores 10 times or scores 9 times or something, I think the passing ceiling is as high as it's ever been to go along with that rushing production. Again, 2 years removed from the ACL tear. So Avery, appreciate you coming on here, bringing us a Kyler Murray take.
Absolutely.
Let's get into the next one. So we're back again here with the other half of Domain Fantasy Football. Nathan, you have a take that me and Danny probably won't agree with, so this will be a really fun exercise here. But what is your bold prediction for 2024?
Yeah, I'm going with Stephon Diggs is going to finish as the lead wide receiver in Houston. I think that this is nothing against Nico Collins, the talent, Tank Dell, the talent. Honestly, I think at the end of the day, it really is any man's guess who's going to be the lead wide receiver there, just based off of what they did last season, what Tank Dell did last season as a rookie, alongside Nico Collins when they were both on the field. They both had the same amount of targets per game. They both had plenty of explosiveness, ability to get touchdowns on big plays and things like that. Stroud has no issue feeding the ball to every single asset in that offense. But at the end of the day, I love slot wide receivers. And Stephon Diggs has shown every indication, the Texans have shown every indication of running Stephon Diggs through the slot this year. And that's something that I think shouldn't be overlooked because you're looking at this offseason, and you're looking at Nico Collins getting this extension. Tank Dell, is going to come back fully healthy after he injured his foot last year. CJ Stroud is no longer a rookie, right? So he has big expectations this year. They go and they sign Joe Mixon. It's like, what else do they need, really? And at the end of the day, when you look at pretty much their only deficiency last year offensively was a possession wide receiver. So they go out there, they get Stephon Diggs, who's on the wrong side of 30, who admittedly had a terrible second half of the season last year with Josh Allen. But this is a completely different situation, not only with, the guys he's playing alongside, but the scheme is very different. I don't think the Stephon Diggs you're going to see in 2024 is the same Stephon Diggs that we've seen for the last 6 years. He's not going to play that like alpha dominant, I'm going to take every target from everyone in that offense role. But I still think he's going to have a productive role enough that he's going to outproduce everyone else in that offense. I don't think it'll be by a mile, but his ability to command targets in the slot, which he's, done quite a bit of in the past, but more, I think he'll show that more in 2024. That's kind of my take with him this year.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have heard the anti-Diggs take from us a number of times. We're big Collins guys. We think that, when you have a guy going into year 10 with Stephon Diggs, that's typically around the time that wide receivers start to show their age a little bit. Right. And obviously we did see that down the stretch, but was that a product of maybe him dealing with something? Was that a product of him showing his age? The one thing I will say about Stephon Diggs, because this is how I think he burns us, because we are staunch Nico Collins over Diggs guys. Yeah. This is how he burns us, it's a Larry Fitzgerald late career slot PPR stud. And I think that's kind of what you're saying with this bold prediction, especially in PPR formats.
Yeah. And I do have one question for you too, because I'm genuinely curious. Avery and I have done some research on wide receivers in 2023 that had roughly the same amount of targets, anywhere from 100 to 115. Those guys that, outproduced expectations given their volume. And those top guys were, Devontae Smith in 2022, Brandon Ayuk last year, Waddle in 2022, and then Nico Collins. They all had around 110 targets and produced as wide receiver ones. And what you saw with Waddle and Devontae Smith in 22 is they fell off in 23 because their yak went down, their touchdowns went down, or their opportunity maybe decreased as well. With Collins and Ayuk, it's sort of the same thing with them this year, where they where we saw that they had 105, 110 targets, a ton of yards per reception, like 17 yards per reception, a decent amount of touchdowns as well. Are you expecting Nico Collins to increase his target volume, and do you think that will compensate for probably an expected decrease in yards per reception, or what's kind of your projection there?
Yeah, I absolutely think that, when a great young player takes a big step forward, they're usually rewarded with more targets. Like you said, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. I think what limited those guys in 23, if we're going based on like their output from 2022, is, Waddle was banged up last year. So to me, I don't really put too much credence to it.
He's a good price this year.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. Devontae Smith, I think the Eagles offense just took a major step back, and volume wise, I think the Texans might be on a higher level than where the Eagles were. So again, I definitely acknowledge that both Collins and Ayuk, both of them, I love this year. Yeah. But there is a lot of target competition. I prefer the guy who is the young ascending player. Wide receiver has the red zone kind of role. But I do recognize that Stephon Diggs could still be the same Stephon Diggs that we know, especially if he's in this kind of new role where it's a little bit easier to beat corners in the slot versus on the outside. And I've heard Matt Harmon talk about how he thought that's how they should use Stephon Diggs at this point in his career. So this will be an interesting debate, man. The Texans wide receivers
it will be.
It's the biggest debate in fantasy football, maybe outside of like the Packers wide receivers. Everybody has an opinion on the Texans. So
and no one really knows.
Exactly.
So at the end of the day, though, if Nico Collins ends up posting 130, 140 targets, you're right, he'll be the lead wide receiver there. It's just a matter of if he gets there. So
exactly. Yeah. The target distribution will be interesting to see. Nathan, appreciate you for joining me. Let's
Thank
pivot
you,
right into Danny's guys. He's going to be sitting down with the land guys as well as Mason.
All right, we're joined by Mason Dodd of Flock Fantasy. Mason, what is your spiciest take for the 2024 NFL season?
We're going Josh Jacobs outscores Derrick Henry. Now, if you're looking at the ADP gap, Henry goes round 3, Jacobs goes round 5 on underdog. Redraft leagues, Henry goes round 2, Jacobs goes to like the 3-4 turn. My thought process here is Jacobs, much younger back. We saw the efficiency drop with Henry over the past 2 years. A lot of that was dictated by offense. And while, yes, Henry gets the massive offensive improvement going from Tennessee to Baltimore, Josh Jacobs gets a massive improvement as well going from the Raiders to the Packers, right? So you're looking at a younger running back that gets the same offensive improvement, but the main difference for me is Jacobs is going to catch the ball, where we know Henry's not going to catch the ball, and Lamar's not going to drop it off really at all, just given the fact that Lamar can run the ball himself.
Yeah, I mean, I have Jacobs ranked higher than Henry. I agree with this completely, and I think you outlined it perfectly. The other thing with Derrick Henry that people aren't really acknowledging, obviously people are going to point, he's with the Ravens. He's going to rush in for 20 touchdowns. What am I missing here? Year 9 running backs, which is what Derrick Henry's going into, year 9, on average, 62% of their average career production. And I actually mentioned this in the running back rankings tier list, but I get it. Derrick Henry's peak, one of the best running backs in our era. He was an absolute monster, 2019, 2020, but if you're dealing with potentially 62% of that production, not looking at the same player. And with Josh Jacobs, like you said, people are really not factoring just how good this Packers offense will be in terms of goal line opportunity. Obviously, Matt LaFleur's rushing scheme. Josh Jacobs, the perfect between the tackles banger that they've needed for this offense. So I'm on the same page, and I agree with you. I have Jacobs ranked straight up over Henry.
Love it, my guy. One last thing, too. If you look at the contracts that they get, Jacobs getting paid significantly more money than Henry is.
Night and day. Well, again, thank you, Mason. Agree with the take. And yeah, I definitely think that's going to come to fruition, not just as a spicy take, but an actual take this season.
Thank you.
All right, we're joined by Zach of Fantasyland Fantasy Football. Zach, what is your spicy take for the 2024 fantasy football season?
All right, my hot take. All right. Rashee Rice, top 12 finish in 2024. I don't know if that's spicy enough. I almost went top 10, but I think top 12. I don't even know if this is a hot take. I think it's a realistic possibility. Genuinely, if you look at last year, you got to keep in mind he was a rookie, right? Rookies don't typically start right out the gates and are going crazy. Only from week 11 onwards did Rashee Rice become a starter. For the first part of the season, he was playing about 45% of the snaps. From weeks 11 onwards, 75% of the snaps. From week 11 onwards, all right, his per game averages 8.7 targets, 17 fantasy points per game. This is essentially Nico Collins, but no one's pricing him that way. Like, that's how I'm viewing it this year. His 17 game pace from week 11 onwards, 114 receptions, 150 targets, almost 1,400 receiving yards. All right, now clearly that's not what I'm projecting this year because they've added Xavier Worthy, they have Hollywood Brown, but we're talking about a player who all-time Chiefs rookie wide receivers first in receptions. This is a young player that Patrick Mahomes already trusts over the middle of the field. We already saw Travis Kelce's production slightly dip last year. I think you're going to see Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy stretch the field. Rashee Rice is going to be a yak monster. From week 11 onwards, he scored more points per game last year than Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, Brandon Ayuk, Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, and Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's funny because we actually just recorded our dynasty buys, and Rashee Rice was my biggest dynasty buy at wide receiver 28 on KTC. And like you said, quite frankly, I remember I was doing the wide receiver rankings tier list on a week in, week out basis across the entirety of the 2023 season. And once Rashee Rice became a full-time player, like you said, week 11 onward, this was a constant top 10 overall wide receiver in my ranking. So saying he'll finish as a wide receiver 1, I'm absolutely on board with that. I have him ranked as a top 24 receiver right now. Again, got to diminish it a little bit just because of the additions down the field. Obviously, Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown, but there's a very real possibility with how Rashee Rice operates in this offense, being that, short-term, intermediate threat, yak ability that he brings to the table. I love the take. I think Rashee Rice is set to explode.
Let me ask you this. If one of Hollywood or Worthy were not on this team, where would you rank Rice going into the season?
He would be probably right about, we're talking about the Devontae Smith range, probably above that. I would say early to mid-third.
Yeah.
Early to mid-third.
Same. So I think you're getting him at a discount because I think his role is the most solidified of those names.
No, I am on the same page. I am glad you talked about Rashee Rice because, again, you had to. If you guys were watching the video, you'd realize, you saw the Chiefs hat. You had to make it Chiefs related,
Yeah, now they're going to say, there's some bias there. He's a great player. Just draft him.
We'll take it for the YouTube algo if you want to comment that down below. Anyways, I appreciate having you on, brother.
Thanks,
Love
man.
the take, and I am in full agreement. We are on Team Rashee. All right, I'm with Badaki of Fantasyland Fantasy Football. Badaki, what is your spicy take for the 2024 fantasy football season?
Yeah, he has been my guy all off season. Ever since, I would say, the NFL draft, I was like, I kind of am all in on this guy after who I realized who they took. That's Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid for the Buffalo Bills. And predominantly the main reason why he is a my guy is because I don't think they really got enough in at the NFL draft. You know, we were thinking Xavier Worthy. We were thinking Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, we all know the talks of them trying to move up to get one of these wide receivers because obviously Stephon Diggs is no longer with the team. But for me, Dalton Kincaid is easily the number one target on this offense. We kind of saw the uptick in production in the second half of the season when Joe Brady finally took over this play calling. And honestly, there's a lot of my guys on this team. You know, I can talk about Shakira, who I bought on another channel. I can talk about James Cook, who I love this year. But Dalton Kincaid right now, for me, is going to, I guess my hot take, if I have to put my stamp on it, most likely tight end one.
Ooh, I like that. Spicy. And I mean, when you're talking about the offensive insulation of the situation, at the end of the day, everybody pretty much agrees that, especially for fantasy, Josh Allen is the type of insulation you need for your offense. Again,
No
people
question.
will talk about in real life, he throws too many interceptions. I mean, in my opinion, I think Josh Allen is the quarterback two from a talent standpoint in the NFL, only behind Patrick Mahomes. And like you
I
said,
thought you were
I
going
mean,
to say Dak Prescott. I was like, oh my God. No, I'm joking.
I mean, that's another combo. For those of you wondering, Badaki, big Giants fan, I'm a Cowboys fan,
Yeah.
so we're at peace
We're
for
here
this
for this moment.
for this moment. But yeah, no, Dalton Kincaid, I mean, he's a second-year tight end, has the opportunity in this offense. Again, Josh Allen needs a proven target earner on this team. So
Yeah.
I very much think it could be Dalton Kincaid. I do like Keon Coleman. I do like Khalil Shakir. I do like the overall trio that they have, but there's no proven number one. And
No.
if Dalton Kincaid can become the talent that they drafted him in the first round to be, he has the
Exactly.
opportunity to be able to do so. And I mean, being tied to Josh Allen is a big plus.
Yeah, no question. And you know, if you look at this offense, he is that's currently on in the I guess skill position perspective.
Yeah.
He is the only first round pick, right? Keon Coleman, second round pick. James Cook was a second or third round pick.
Yep.
Obviously, they bring in Curtis Samuel, Shakira. He was more in the second half of the NFL draft. So yeah, Dalton Kincaid. I mean, and another thing is like, you know, there was, I think his rookie season was a little bit overlooked by Sam Laporta as well. I mean, he had a phenomenal rookie season. I loved what he did, obviously, with the Detroit Lions. But if you take Sam Laporta's season out, if he didn't exist for fantasy, Dalton Kincaid would have had an above average finish. So, and I think that's what a lot of people are forgetting is that what he produced as a rookie is still great. And Sam Laporta is just outshining him right now.
Well, it's funny because for so many years, people were like, oh, you know, rookie tight ends, they're nothing in fantasy, this and that. Year 2, year 3 breakouts are usually the way we go. And now that we're seeing the instant gratification of these rookies, people are forgetting, you know, for example, the prime example this year was Trey McBride.
Yeah.
Nothing as a rookie, came out in his second year. And it's funny because Dalton Kincaid didn't even do nothing as a rookie. Like you said, he was relatively productive. He was a guy that had over 70 receptions, over 600 receiving yards. So if he does take that next step, becomes a 850 plus yard, maybe even 900 plus yard tight end, we know Josh Allen's going to throw for over 30, 35 touchdowns. He has an opportunity to potentially be in the double digits.
Yeah, no question. I mean, hopefully that's a hot take enough for you guys. Yeah, but Dalton Kincaid, I love coming in. You can get him obviously the 4th round. Sometimes he falls into the 5th round.
Yeah.
Just really depending on where, you know, how your home leagues are drafting.
I love that mid-range of tight ends this year. I mean, 5th round, Dalton Kincaid. I mean, there's a couple other guys like Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts as well. I mean, Dalton Kincaid is your guy, and I can very well see any of those guys finishing as the tight end 1 overall. But yeah, appreciate you for coming on, man, and love it.
So the two of us are back to put a button on this video with our own bold predictions. Danny, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, my bold prediction, I mean, you guys know my affinity for my beloved Dallas Cowboys, and I have to make a take comparing a young receiver to my beloved CeeDee Lamb, and that's actually going to be that Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets is this year's CeeDee Lamb. We saw in 2022, 2023, CeeDee Lamb take that next jump. I think Garrett Wilson is in store to not only be a stud wide receiver 1, but potentially a top 3 finisher at the position. And with Garrett Wilson, I mean, the talent is clearly there. According to Matt Harmon's reception perception, graded as a 90th percentile separator in man, zone, and press coverage. A guy that has actually commanded the 2nd most targets of all time in a player's first 2 seasons. And now you're adding a situation where Aaron Rodgers is coming in, and I understand there is some pessimism coming off the Achilles tear, but when we're playing for a ceiling projection, which the bold prediction would lean to, if Aaron Rodgers is even 85%, 90% of what we've seen in the past, between 2018 and 2022, Aaron Rodgers was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL in terms of EPA per play. So Garrett Wilson has dealt with bottom-of-the-barrel quarterbacks across his entire career. You know, Tim Boyle, obviously. You guys know our love for Zach Wilson in 2021, but it's safe to say that didn't end up working out. Aaron Rodgers is by far the best quarterback he's ever played with, and Garrett Wilson is just the complete alpha of this offense. There's no real considerable number 2 threat. In fact, you can make the case that Breece Hall is actually their acting wide receiver 2 at this current point. So with Garrett Wilson, he could very well go out there, have, like CeeDee Lamb did last year, 170-plus targets, 1,500 plus receiving yards. And if Aaron Rodgers is back to that 30-plus touchdown range, maybe he has 14, 15 receiving touchdowns.
Yeah, leave it to Danny to bring up a Jets receiver and somehow make it about the Cowboys. But yeah, I love the take. I mean, you guys aren't going to hear any argument from me on Garrett Wilson. I rank him over Justin Jefferson. Like, I have Garrett Wilson. I think that 1,700-yard, 12-touchdown season is coming because we know Aaron Rodgers is a wide receiver kingmaker. Absolutely feeds his number one, and Garrett Wilson is by far the number one there. So let's pivot to my bold prediction. We'll close this video out. James Cook finishes as a top 5 running back in fantasy this year. I think the big hang up for a lot of people on James Cook is he going to get the red zone work? Is he going to get the goal line work? But other than that, you have a young running back who took a big step in year 2, a young running back attached to an offense that we expect to be a top 5 to 10 scoring unit with Josh Allen calling the shots. An offense that lost Stephon Diggs, that lost Gabriel Davis, is looking for a centerpiece, looking for an identity. And I think that James Cook can be the guy for them. And he's added a little bit of weight this year. The goal line role, we know Josh Allen scored 15 rushing touchdowns last year. It is definitely going to factor in. They also drafted Ray Davis in the 4th round, who's a bit more of a thumper running back, and he's actually looked good. But the thing I keep coming back to is that James Cook has not left the field one time in the preseason with the first-team offense, played every single snap so far. I do believe he's going to take a year 3 leap, jump into that 75, 80% opportunity share as a player, potentially posting 90-plus targets, 100-plus targets, given the receiving skill set and the efficiency he's shown in that area as a player to this point in his career. If he can run hot on touchdowns, run hot on big plays, even if he's 50% of the goal line offense, 50% of the red zone offense, I feel like James Cook has a monster ceiling this year, and he's the only dead zone running back that I feel very, very good about.
I am so glad you brought up James Cook, a guy that I've continually risen on across the offseason, a guy that's still considerably cheap on underdog drafts and possibly even your home leagues because he's not that proven, consistent, productive guy like a Derrick Henry would be in most of your leagues. But James Cook, I love the take. Like you said, within the receiving game, he was so damn efficient in that aspect last year. 44 receptions and was still at over 10 yards per reception. So we know this offense is going to be explosive. We know Josh Allen is that absolute guy. And if James Cook, 4 of his 6 touchdowns last year actually came in their final 7 games once Joe Brady took over, I'm extremely optimistic about the tape. And like you said, top 5, I absolutely see that being the case.
Yeah, I mean, he would obviously have to outscore some horses to get up there, but I still think he can do it. I still think he has that type of ceiling. So you heard a lot of bold predictions from a lot of different smart fantasy creators. Obviously, all their channels will be linked down below if you want to check out more of their work. If you want to check out more of our work, you want our draft guide, you want our rankings, that is available for Underdog Fantasy new first-time depositors. Head on over there. Promo code FSE. Sign up. You get up to 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And you'll also get our draft guide emailed to you for free. 24 hours, it'll be in your inbox. And you'll be ready to start using our rankings, using our contextualized game logs, using our risk ratings. Everything that we have to offer you guys is in our draft guide. And of course, if you cannot play Underdog where you live, you already have an account, head on over to flockfantasy.com and use code FSE to sign up over there. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe, check out all the other creators' work. We've been doing a ton of content with them this week. And with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.